All right, so we've created our project and we're brought into the IDE or Integrated Development Environment of Android Studio. Now, if your previous programming experience was only, say, Python in a console environment, this will probably look a little intimidating. If you come from Visual Studio on the C# side of things, maybe you've taken our iOS cohort, we worked with Xcode, this will look a little more familiar. So the IDE allows us to not only create our project, but to also test it and deploy it. It's a place where everything happens for our mobile app development for Android. So let's walk through a quick tour of the layout of Android Studio and how this all functions together. So of course, like with any application, we have a menu bar at the top. We have a button bar over here on the left that can also be brought up to above this area here, which is our navigation bar. And this navigation bar allows us to navigate through the files of our project. And there are a bunch of files when we create an Android app. The main area here, I'm going to say is the center, because we're going to see there'll be things over here on the right. So right now, this area taking up the center or center right area is our editor window. This is where the work is done. This is where we create our code. This is where we're going to create our layouts or the design, the GUI design of our interface. So this is where we'll spend the bulk of our time. As I mentioned, there are a lot of files. And so over here on the left is a tool window, and the tool window we're looking at right now is our project Navigator. And so this shows the various files of our project filtered, and there's a drop-down list of filters here. We're looking at the Android filter, which is what we'll do primarily in this class, is we're going to use Android. If I come up here and click on the drop-down and choose Project Files, you'll see there's actually a lot more here than we saw under the Android view. A lot of that stuff we don't need to worry about, so we'll work with the Android view. Over here on the left-hand side is the tool window bar, which allows us to change what is viewed here in our tool window. There's also a tool window bar at the bottom, and there's one on the right. So this kind of wraps on all three sides of our IDE, and we can come over here and bring up, say, the log, and we'll get another tool window at the bottom. And what's viewed in that bottom tool window is controlled in this bottom tool window bar. And then same way over here on the right-hand side, I'll show you how you can bring up your emulator and have that show up on the right of your IDE. And so rather than before we had the emulator running on top, we can actually have the emulator running in our IDE. You'll see one here for Gradle, and you might say, well, what is Gradle? Gradle is an open source tool that's used to build our project. It not only builds it, it also tests and deploys. I like to think of Gradle as the operations manager of Android Studio. It does a lot of work for us. So these all toggle on and off. There's a terminal window here that you can use to do things on the operating system. There's a to-do list. We can keep track of items that need to be done on your project. But we'll primarily be using the project Navigator and the editor, and then we'll use the emulator to test, and we'll look at some things through the logcat. So right now in our editor, we are seeing the main activity Kotlin file. Notice it ends in a .kt. That's Kotlin. Now you'll see that it says Java here. And again, Java is the core of what Android is based on. And so as it compiles through Gradle, they're still looking for a Java folder. We're not using Java, although there will be possibly some Java routines that come into play, because a lot of the API or application programming interface of Android is Java based still. In many ways, Kotlin is based on Java. So we have our main activity, and this is the code for main activity. There's also, you'll see an activity underscore main.xml. And so there's a folder here in our project Navigator that says RES. That stands for resources. I'm going to click the triangle to expand that. And there are various folders here in resources. One is drawable. That's going to be the graphics we bring into our project. The layout is our user interface. So I'm going to open that up, and you'll see the activity main.xml file that we see on our tabs is listed there. I can move between files in the editor simply by clicking the tab of whatever files are open. And so here then is a visual representation of our activity_main.xml file. So the interface is based on extendable markup language code, and we can view this editor as design, which gives us ability to drag and drop controls onto our screen. This is a mock-up of our screen, and here we see a wireframe of it. So this will not contain any of the colors. It's simply as a wireframe, kind of think of it as a blueprint. But I can also view this as code. So some people like to work primarily in code, others like to work in the design mode, and some people like to be able to do both. And there's a split option here where you can see side by side the code and the design. I'm going to go back to the design. And again, to go back to the code behind, which is going to be in our Kotlin file, that's going to be the main activity_kt. Now an activity, as I mentioned before, is you can think of it as a screen or a page in your Android app. And by default, we'll always have a main activity. We do not have to have a main activity. We could change the name of it, and there is a manifest file up here. I'm going to open that up. And so as I open up a file, I'm just going to double click on it. We'll see the file shown here, and then we'll see the tab added to the top. And again, we can jump between these on the tabs. So you'll see there's an activity here of .mainActivity. If we want to have a different activity being our opening screen or opening page, we can change that in the manifest. For now, we're not going to do anything with the manifest. I'm going to close that, so I'm just going to close the tab. Going back to the resource folder, we have an MipMap folder. This contains our icons for the launcher. And by default, these are in PNG files. And notice there are different resolutions here. So there's a high DPI, dots per inch, a medium dots per inch, an extra high, an extra extra high, and a triple X high version of our icons.
And there's an XML file that references those.
The challenge with Android is we have a lot of different manufacturers that have different models, and we have phones and we have tablets, and each one might have a different resolution for the graphics. So we provide 5 different versions of the graphics to correspond to the different models of phones that are available. There's also a round version of those icons. When we start adding graphics, we'll add those to the drawable folder, and we'll have the same thing. We'll have 5 different versions of our graphics to meet that high, medium, extra high, XXH, and triple XH, or extra, extra, extra high. So again, we can use the correct version of the graphic that's going to look really good. We'll talk more about graphics down the road and how to create those different versions. I like to use Photoshop, and I've created a little script that you can run in Photoshop to make that a little bit easier to do. We also have values here, and we can specify XML values for different colors and different strings, and then finally different themes we might want to incorporate. So that's a quick tour of the IDE of Android Studio. In the next video, we'll take this project and we'll modify it a little bit to add some different controls in our user interface, and then to write a little bit of code to do some things when the user interacts with those controls.
If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Android App Development Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.